very important conversation. What we're going to be talking about is Ukrainian democracy, Euro-Atlantic integration, and the anti-corruption efforts. And those three issues, I would say, are central to what is happening in Ukraine right now, central to Ukraine's future, and they are intimately linked. And I just want to offer one thought about how to think about all this before we hear from our panel. And the thought that I would like to share, especially for the visitors to Ukraine, is we all need to remember Ukraine is a democracy, just as we are. And I sometimes find okay, well, thank you. I sometimes find as a Western elected politician with a long history working with Ukraine, that sometimes outside Ukraine, when we talk about Ukraine, we forget that Ukraine's a democracy too, and has the same opportunities and challenges that come with leadership of a very vibrant democracy. So that's just my one thought. And now we will hear from our panel on the issues of integration with Europe and the Atlantic community, democracy, anti-corruption drive. I'm going to first offer actually the speaker a chance to talk about these issues, Ruslan Stefanchuk. Now, I think we could have a contest in this room who has the hardest job. I think Ruslan could be a candidate for having the hardest job of anyone in this room. Being the speaker of any parliament is a challenge. The Ukrainian parliament is full of strong-willed people who aren't shy about expressing their views. So, Руслане, дуже дякую за вашу роботу. Tell us your views on these key issues.
Дорога Христя,
Dear Christia, esteemed participants of this panel, esteemed people's deputies, members of parliament, guests, participants, thank you for this wonderful opportunity to share my ideas with you, to hear from you. Because indeed, we are living through unique times in the international history. We've got a parliament in Ukraine that has been in place for almost 7 years, and most of this time in wartime. So I think that very rare parliaments throughout the world would have this experience, and that's not the experience that people would appreciate our sharing. But I would like to thank our interparliamentary partners. Chris, I've just come from Canada, where I was hosted by the G7 speakers. And I can assure you that at the parliamentary level, Ukraine continues to get full-hearted support from our colleagues in other parliaments. I received reassurances from all of the speakers who participated that Ukraine is still the priority of the international policy, and everyone is wishing Ukraine victory. Thank you very much for this support. I would also like to thank members of Ukrainian parliament. It's not in vogue today, you know. The trend is to criticize members of parliament, both in the media and in personal conversations, but I would like to thank each and every one of them, because today we've got the smallest Ukrainian parliament in Ukraine's history, and we have to make decisions according to the Constitution, it's Parliament that takes the most challenging, the most consequential decisions in the state. So each and every Ukrainian MP that in discussions, in information battles, still take the correct decisions are very valuable to all of us. So now for reforms. We are fully aware in Parliament that reform is not only about legislation. It's not only about voting in Parliament. It's what we are all after. I can see here Minister Kačka, and he is the Minister for European Integration, which is a priority for Parliament, and it guides us on our trajectory to the European integration. And the Parliament has been and is doing everything to introduce reforms that will deliver the expected results. Now, reforms can be different. Some reforms that you sometimes do not want to introduce are related with this atrocious war. Ukraine as a victim in this war. Nobody would like to vote for the extension of the martial law for certain limitations for transferring Ukrainian economy to the military or war stance. But we are now speaking about the reforms that the Parliament has to introduce. A separate block would be related to the social protection of Ukrainian military, both veterans and active ones, and families of the fallen soldiers. We consider budget, we consider other issues, and we managed to do a lot to ensure this social protection. Another block of issues is related willy-nilly to the speedy digitalization of all processes in this state, when it comes to anti-corruption, when it comes to user-friendly public services to the citizens of Ukraine, and again, protecting our military, be it in DIA app or MRIA portal or other digital projects and products available to Ukrainians. We also conduct a whole set of other reforms aiming to facilitate and speed up Ukraine's recovery. We've already adopted a series of laws, including the mineral agreement that was ratified unanimously in the Ukrainian parliament. Next week, we are going to ratify simultaneously with our British colleagues the 100-year agreement between our two countries. So we will be looking forward to our collaboration over these next 100 years. And we also have to regulate our day-to-day business, parliamentary business. Sometimes people ask us, why do you take or adopt so many laws? And I always tell them, it's about a key, it's about our commitments to the EU, about approximation and harmonization of our legislation with that of the EU. Not all of them are very popular because some of the regulations and directives are very specific, very nitty-gritty, and sometimes even painful, but we have to do that. And to the end, I would like to assure you that Ukrainian Parliament has always been standing firm for the interest of the Ukrainian people, for the victory in this very hard war. We are with those who do everything to bring our victory closer, so that this war could be put to an end. Thank you and glory to Ukraine. Thank you, Lan, I thank you. I know that you speak Ukrainian now, but you can speak English and a bit of French, and I can assure you that emotional and informational destruction of the parliamentarians is not the unique phenomenon for Ukraine. It's a characteristic of feature of any democracy. It's the front line in our political lives.
Ruslan talked about how the work of the parliament has been fundamental to everything that Ukraine has done. And we heard that in the conversation with Minister Shmihal, that in fact the military innovation was only able to happen because parliament passed laws. Ukraine is a rule of law democracy. Okay, now we're going to hear from Taras Kačka. And just as a Canadian, I want to thank Taras for the work he personally has done on the Canada-Ukraine trade agreement. It's something that we as Canadians are very proud of, and it would not have happened had it not been for Taras's work. Дуже дякую. Taras, you now have this critical responsibility for Euro-Atlantic integration. Tell us how you're going to do it.
Thank you. Thank you for recalling about trade. Yeah, so that's after 6 weeks, yeah, on this post, I could say that those sweet times, yeah, in trade. Yeah, so now we have definitely different agenda, and I'm glad that Oleksandr and Semen is here. So that I think that this is the essence of our European integration: the institutions, anti-corruption institutions that work in Ukraine, but. Trade is a really good example. So that I usually when I talk to my vis-a-vis in trade, we are discussing problems. So in trade, you never discuss something positive. You always discuss problems. And if you have no problems in trade with your partner, it means you have no trade. Yeah. So that if more trade you have, more problems you have. So that's why I think that, and this is about democracy. This is as well. Thank you for this. This is the essence of European integration. The essence of European integration is not to sell nice, beautiful, shiny Ukraine as a product, yeah, as a something like this small dog of this statuette, yeah, so that is shiny and glamour. No, it's about actually joining Ukrainian democracy with all these messy discussions in parliament and interinstitutionals and scandals into the same democratic European Union. It's about bringing Ukrainian society with millions of different views into the European Union. So that's why all the discussions, mistakes, and step aside are important part of showing that Ukrainian society is alive. And that's why this is not something artificial we want to sell to the European Union. We want to join as a society, and that's why everything what happens is good. The question is that what is the direction of these changes? You can have a scandal and continue to fix the scandal and change political culture in institutions, and this is what we have now. You can have scandals that or some attacks that actually make anti-corruption institutions stronger. The question that whether they are getting stronger or weaker, this dynamics is important. The same with parliament. Parliament is the essence of debates when someone is in for or against any draft law. So that's why I think that we need to have these heat debates between parliamentarians, and I really appreciate what Parliament is doing. So indeed, and that to be in Parliament like for 6 years without elections, without refreshing, is also getting some, bringing some institutional like tiredness, yeah, because you are constantly attacked by stakeholders from your constituency, from different parties of interest, civil society organizations, that you should do this or that. And when you constantly approach with this request, and at 6th year you can say that I'm tired to listen to this. Yeah, so that's, and our parliament is not tired. So it's getting more and more mature. So that's why it's getting more and more complicated to convince. You cannot just simply say, oh, this is European standards, please vote for or against. You need to explain how it works. So that's why everything, what happens in Ukraine, in Ukrainian government, sensu largo, so all the institutions, is alive, moving in good direction, proper direction, and we need all these processes to continue in order to bring us closer to the European Union. And as I said, like earlier today, that now we enter in the culminating moment in the accession talks that will require 3 or 4 years of very intensive work of all governmental institutions, because now we've been planning what we need to do. And now, like this fall, when we will open the clusters, it will be negotiations, but not negotiations in the form of reporting to the EU and negotiating between ourselves, how we change ourselves in order to live according to EU rules. It means businesses, people, but also governmental institutions. So that's why we definitely need to use we definitely need to continue the democratic way of decision making, but be very disciplined in terms of timing, that we don't have a lot of time. So we need to do this very fast pace. Whether we are able to do this, I think yes. A lot of people who are opposing this, they have a million reasons to say why it is not the case, but I still believe that we can do it properly on time with these institutions, and everything will be okay, especially taking into account that the core element of the accession process is also a roadmap on democratic institutions, that we need actually to ensure that these institutions are operating well, fine, and effectively. So not to add this to rule of law and anti-corruption, which is another quite essential roadmap. Thank you, and I think about time that I used a little bit more than it was expected. Yeah, thank you.
Ні, то нічого, це все було дуже цікаво. And I'm just going to underscore 2 things that Taras said. One, something very powerful and important about trading relationships and economic relationships, that the only time you don't have quarrels is if you don't actually have a relationship. Very powerful, very true, important to bear in mind in your work going forward. And then Taras, your point about the deputate being beaten up by their stakeholders, I think that experience will be familiar to every single elected person or government official in this room. It is a feature and not a bug of democracy, even though it's not always fun to experience. Okay, next I'm going to call on Semen Kryvonos, the head of the director of the National Anti-Corruption Bureau, NABU. And again, here I want to say to those of us who are visitors to Ukraine, I think sometimes we can frame this question of corruption, as Taras pointed out, as being, critical to the talks with the EU, as being a demand imposed by the EU and Western partners on Ukraine, something Ukraine needs to be pressed by outsiders to do. And I think in the person of Semen and in all of those Ukrainians who have ensured that Semen's organization and his work is being done, what I think we learn is that this pressure for Ukraine not to be corrupt comes for sure from the outside, but I would argue even more, this is an organic demand, a very powerful one coming from Ukrainian society. So, Семене, дуже цікаво почути від вас. Якщо ви хочете, можете про цифровізацію також поговорити, яку роль це грає.
So, Semen, it would be very interesting to hear from you. Thank you very much. Ms. Freeland, you have begun our panel discussion with a very apt statement that Ukraine is a democracy. This is 100% true. And the key element of democracy are independent and powerful institutions. So you have to create them and keep them afloat and make them even stronger. I do agree that this is not the demand of international partners' anti-corruption activity. This is first of all the demand of and request of Ukrainian people. We see this from sociological surveys. If we talk about the institutional capacity of NABU and the Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, we can say that this is one of the guarantees of our future accession to the EU. The legal changes that we have to see, the number of events and actions that both our organizations have to conduct are the future guarantee of our accession to the EU, and this pertains to the listening rights, tapping rights of our organizations, about our procedural rights when investigating the cases. What is important is that the NABU, in order to become stronger, has undergone through the international independent audit, and we are listening to its recommendations now. However, a huge part of these recommendations, which are external recommendations, mean the adoption of respective changes through the parliament, and we expect that the parliament will be on the side of anti-corruption bodies, because this, again I say this, will require a huge number of legal changes. And the third point is to avoid the pressure and discreditation of our bodies. Of course, there are no ideal institutions. We have audit, we have the risk mitigating plan, we have the plan of moving forward. However, this does not mean that NABU and SAP should be under pressure or under attack. We have to retain our procedural independence, we have to adhere to high standards of our work, and of course, we have to avoid any pressure on anti-corruption infrastructure. This is the key element. And the last thing I would like to underline, and I address our international partners here, Ukraine has made huge steps in the direction of fighting corruption. This is reality, absolute reality. We see this after the full-scale invasion started. We see this through the things, through the cases that we investigate. We have made our results more important. And here I would quote some of the positions held by officials that we bring to responsibility. So, of course, we are part of the all-European body, and we will do everything possible so that Ukraine joins the European Union. Glory to Ukraine. Thank you very much for your work, for your words.
Another panelist whose job is fighting corruption in Ukraine. This is Oleksandr Klymenko. He is the head of the Specialized Anti-Corruption Unit in the Prosecutor's Office. Oleksandre, proшу.
Дякую.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to add a bit of positive things to what Semen has said. We have a huge progress in fighting corruption in Ukraine. The last survey held by the National Anti-Corruption Committee of Ukraine said that only something like 30% of Ukrainians face corruption directly. If we compare this to 10 years ago, the figure was 73%. So within 10 years, we have lowered the number of those who face corruption from 73 to 17%. And of course, we should work in this direction. NDI Ukraine have held the same the survey in the same vein, they got something like 30% response of those who face corruption directly. However, their methodology was different because they also included relatives and friends into this. The attitude has changed very much. 10 years ago, not many Ukrainians thought that this was an unsurmountable objective. We now have to implement the reforms that would preclude corruption from developing in Ukraine. And now I have to address Mr. Ruslan and Sergei Ivanov's that the draft laws that are being tabled in the parliament have to be regarded with consideration of the thoughts of our anti-corruption bodies, because we are revealing the reasons why the crime has been perpetrated, and we recommend the government to do this or that, so that to preclude those crimes. And I think that we should be proud of this. We are always talking to our international partners, because the number of anti-corruption investigations that has risen in Ukraine over the war years is not the proof of the rise of corruption. This is the proof of the efficiency, of a better efficiency of our work. Of course, we should not cover this up. There is corruption in every country. There is no country that has dealt with corruption 100%. Ukraine does not hide the fact of corruption. We are fighting it. So this is my key message. Thank you.
Okay, Олександре, дуже вам дякую.
Thank you, Alexander, very much.
We are now, so we've heard from our Ukrainian panelists about the work they're doing to fight corruption, about the work they're doing on their path to the EU, about what a vibrant democracy Ukraine is, including the challenges that poses, but also the opportunities. And now we have one of the European leaders whom the Ukrainians are working so hard to join, Benjamin Haddad. So please, I think we would all love to hear your perspective on the work Ukraine is doing and on Ukraine's path to the EU.
Thank you, Christia. And it's great to be on this panel surrounded by 4 friends with whom we actually work very closely with on a daily basis, precisely to support Ukraine's reform effort, fight against corruption, transparency, and its path towards the European Union. And you're right, you mentioned that this is both an aspiration and a demand by the Ukrainian population. It's, of course, necessary for Ukraine to join the European Union. And I would add a third element. I think this reform work by Ukrainians is integral to the war effort against Russia. The first time I was in Kyiv was to support the Revolution of Dignity on the Maidan Square in 2014. And I was just a pro-European activist. I was profoundly moved by the movement and the sacrifice by all these young Ukrainians on Maidan Square brandishing European flags at a time where, let's be honest, 2 years before Brexit, a year where the far right won the European elections in France in 2014, at a time where we were very jaded and cynical sometimes about what the EU meant, taking it for granted. And we could see young Ukrainians reminding us of what we were lucky enough to have by being killed for this EU flag for the first time in history. And why were they doing this? Precisely because they saw that the fight to join and to get closer to the European Union was correlated with a better future, with the rule of law, with the fight against corruption. And this is precisely what Vladimir Putin was trying to prevent. This is what led to the annexation of Crimea and already the war in the Donbass and then the full-scale invasion. It's the desire to prevent Ukraine from being a free, independent, and European nation. So these two things go hand in hand, and I think precisely having a democracy that's a counter model to the imperial predatory neighbor that is Russia is the best sign and the best model, the best message that can be sent. We work, as you mentioned, very closely with our Ukrainian friends in accompanying this effort. Joining the European Union, as we often say, is merit-based. It's demanding, it's a long process, it's reforms, it's making sure you have protection of the opposition, independent media, independent judiciary, the rule of law, the fight against corruption, and we're here to support this process and to accompany it. But I want to add something else. It is demanding, and we sometimes have very frank conversations about the reforms that need to be addressed, about the independence of anti-corruption bodies, etc. But it should not be hijacked for bilateral or political reasons. And we're here, and we just talked about it with some of my colleagues, at a time where Ukrainians, under the bombings of Russia, have continued reforming, have continued courageously this process. And unfortunately, as we have the discussions in Europe, the first cluster of negotiation is not yet open because Hungary is still blocking it. And I think that also not because of the reform process in Ukraine, but because it's used for bilateral political reasons. And that's not acceptable. And that's something that we have to address very clearly. So I really want to commend the work that the Ukrainians are doing to continue these reforms in extremely dire circumstances, and tell them that the French and the other Europeans will be there to continue to support all the way for Ukraine to join the European Union.
Okay, je dois juste dire merci beaucoup. Okay, so we're going to turn to the floor now, and then we have only 11 minutes to go. So I think what we'll do is take a few questions and then let the panelists in a final round answer the questions as they wish to. And you don't have to answer every single question. And you can also offer your sort of final commentary on everything that you've heard. First, I'm going to turn to Michael Gahler of the European Parliament, representing Germany.
Well, I represent the entire European Union, so to say.
Yes.
Now, first of all, thank you for this panel, and thank you. I would like to start with you, Christian, what you said. Yes, Ukraine is a democracy. Yes, Ukraine is a democracy in war. Yes, Ukraine is a democracy on the road to the European Union. And I think on this road, it is important to address these issues, like many other issues, and it's on the way of legislation to acquire all that. And I'm very grateful to the civil society and the citizens here when on the way to the European Union, hiccups happen or backlashes, that they are corrected. And we have seen that with the NABU and ZAPO legislation, where there was the attempt to get it under the control of the Prosecutor General. And it did not even require us. I mean, we also said something, but it was the Ukrainian citizens and civil society who said, hey, that's not the right way. That's not the way forward. And it's good to have those two sitting here now. And my question to you both is, are you now with a reinstated new or old legislative framework? It's not 100% the old one. Are you satisfied with this framework for your independent work? Or is there something else that you, from your position, require? I think it has been, since the end of the Yanukovych regime, for those who wanted to do it the old way, it has been an uphill battle, and that is good. And so far, all the best for your future work. But the question remains, are you satisfied with what you've got now? Thank you.
Okay, that is such an important question on the mind of so many people. I'm actually going to ask Semen and Oleksandr to give brief answers to that question right away. Then I'll go again to the floor. Semen, proшу.
Так, законодавчо все, що було до тих подій.
Legislation-wise, everything what was before the 22nd of July, we have come back to the previous. So basically, we've renewed our procedural independence, and the head of our prosecutor's office has all the leverage to work independently. Are we happy with this? Well, as I've already said, there's still a lot of work to do. We have to do still a lot to improve the situation. I'm saying something which is not very popular, but we do communicate so that the head of the anti-corruption prosecutor's office should be entitled to start proceedings against MPs. We insisted on this. Why this matters? Well, we are duty-bound to do this, but we cannot initiate. We are obliged to investigate the crimes, but we cannot initiate or start proceedings, just like we... And we, except from serving a note of suspicion, we cannot do anything. So we have a duty, but do not have the right to do this. So expert institution should be free of any political pressure and should be able to calculate the scope of embezzlement, for instance, during a construction of a bridge or something. And this institution should be totally independent, because if a high-ranking official is guilty of the embezzlement, he will make sure that in the expert analysis, wrong figures will figure. And again, telephone tapping, which I mentioned before, we've made some headway here. We are now trying to improve our technical capabilities to do so, and then we will try to make sure that we're given the right to tap telephones.
Okay, Олександре, додавайте.
Alexander, would you like to add? Yes, I agree that we have come back to the previous status quo. But what happened slowed down our work considerably, and it made our cooperation with whistleblowers more difficult. So there have been consequences, and the consequences are quite critical, quite bad. And even now, there are some hurdles which make it difficult for us to do our job. But basically what has happened is positive, that the Parliament revoked the harmful changes. And I support what my colleagues said, that giving more authorities to initiate proceedings is really crucial, especially if we are talking about MPs. If that is included in our legislation, this will help us a lot, because investigating criminal or corruption offenses without an independent expert institution would be impossible.
I'm going to just take two more points or comments here and here.
Дякую. Професор Гарань з Києво-Могилянської академії.
Professor Garань, Kyiv-Mogila Academy. Thank you for bringing up the topic of the protests, which resulted in the renewal of independence of these two anti-corruption institutions. Well, we're on the right track, but what happened on the 22nd of July happened in Parliament. So the Parliament is responsible for putting in place a law in an illegal manner. A week later, the Parliament voted for something which is quite the opposite. Ruslan, do we have a guarantee that will assure us that the Parliament will continue operating as an independent institution, so that people would not be forced to take to the streets? One more thing, and then we'll hear the commentaries.
Thank you very much. I'm Alexei Zhmirnetsky, member of Anti-Corruption Committee of the Parliament. I want to highlight that Parliament and Ukraine achieved and met all benchmarks of EU's macro-financial assessment, IMF assessment, and Ukraine facility requirements, despite of all of these scandals, rumors, etc. And I want to ask Mr. Kryvonos and Mr. Klymenko about the needed legislation. If we describe all the needed legislation like a scale, like a percentage, what percentage of all needed legislation already in place? And what the percentage is that what you ask in the parliament? I mean, these 3 points: the right to open the cases against the MPs, the independent expertise, and the right to use equipment for the investigation. Yes, if we place all of this needed legislation on the scale, what the percentage still absent on it? Thank you.
Okay. Яке є завдання до Верховної Ради? And just, I'm going to do something a little bit cheeky. Could you pass the microphone to Tom Friedman? He's right there. Yeah. Tom, I would just like you to either ask a question or make a comment on what you are seeing happening in Ukrainian democracy and the anti-corruption work. How should Ukrainians think about the eye of the world on what's happening?
Well, first of all, I'm incredibly impressed by what I've seen here, but there's clearly 2 battlefields. There's the one against Russia on the outside, and there's one inside against corruption. And Ukraine will only be free, obviously, when it wins both battles. I get stopped every once in a while by someone asking me, is the world still flat? And I tell them, actually, it's flatter than ever. We can all see inside each other now, so much deeper and farther and efficiently than ever before. And so capital and talent will all flow, to those places where investments are secure, and where the opportunities are the best. And so I think that if Ukraine can win both these battles, and I so admire the fight that it's making in both fronts, I think it will have a very bright future. And I'm just very impressed, but was surprised, I will tell you, Christia, when I watched what happened here in the last couple of months over flawed legislation being introduced. And at the same time, I was incredibly impressed the way civil society here rose up to defeat it. If I would just close by saying, if you could send us a few of those people to America right now, we could use people with that kind of courage.
Okay, that's a pretty nice tribute, Team Ukraine. And we've run out of time, so I will just very quickly ask Ruslan and Taras make a final comment, and then I'll ask Benjamin to say one final word from Europe. You do it very, because otherwise Victor will kill me.
I'll be shortly. Вельмишановний пане професор, я відповім вам теж на правах, що я теж був
Professor, I will answer your question with all due
just to remind you the hectic activity around the anti-corruption bodies. I myself tied to the decision made by this parliament at the beginning of its session in 2019. That had been the time that provided the foundation, enabling action of all the anti-corruption bodies. So the parliament became open for that. Next, I'd like to remind you a whole range of relevant legislative changes. The anti-corruption court started operations in 2019. Was the time when the concept anti-corruption law until 25 was adopted. By the way, we're still waiting for proposals. We want a continuation for 2026, 2030. And these were the changes instituted by this parliament. They never had existed before. And yes, it happened as it happened because the Ukrainian parliament and Ukraine's president demonstrate the unseen ability to hear what people want. It has never happened in Russia. We are ready to do everything to see that anti-corruption bodies and the fight against corruption remain a serious exercise. Yes, we were saying that there are still questions to anti-corruption struggle, but I would still like to revisit the starting law. We want to have no questions to anti-corruption body. We are ready to do everything to have it like that. And please believe the Ukrainian parliament will be ready to continue working everything for that. Thank you. Just one sentence, Taras. Okay, not just one, too late. But, well, let us understand that on 22nd of July, it was a shortcoming of the parliament. The last convocation, we had same hectic voting. It was about general prosecutor function. It was also a mistake that never was corrected. Now, secondly, legislative changes on anti-corruption that we are talking about. These are the matters related to further performance of such bodies. NABU, SAP now have everything in terms of their authority to operate as expected. Yes, there are wishes about improving things further, independent forensic expert, so on, assessment, but these are things for tomorrow. These are not the basic things that are completely necessary. And yes, this parliament is the only one that made it possible to use anti-corruption initiatives applied to current officials, not the future ones. I'm constantly mentioning that besides being a target, I am turning myself into a KPI for such bodies. So, yes, we need to understand whenever we talk about something legislative, it's about the future, it's about development, it's about further things. Whether these are the right ones or not, it's a matter to best be discussed. We shouldn't take it as an, something cast in stone. But we're moving in that direction. And in reality, we need to simply, understand, comprehend the sort of progress achieved so far. And my very last comment on trade. You can never be satisfied with your results in trade negotiations. If you seem to be confident and happy, it means you've been cheated. And yes, NABU and SAP can never be content, and this is right for them because they have to work.
Another person who's going to be dissatisfied with us if we don't conclude now is going to be Viktor Pinchuk, our host. So, Viktor says it's okay. He allows us. Very important conversation. Can we give Benjamin a final word? Okay. 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 Слухайте, окей. Semen, Oleksandr, Viktor вам дає слово відповісти на це.
Victor has given you a chance to say more. Semen, Alexander, let me comment on the independence of certain guarantees and MPs. The previous mechanism provided us an opportunity to start an investigation, collect evidence, and then notify about responsibility and our incriminations after the end of the parliamentary session. The current situation does not provide us this opportunity. I think it would send a strong signal to the public if the parliament would reopen this opportunity for us to launch investigations. Okay, clear-cut statement. We have a lot to do together with the parliament. We've been in a constructive dialogue so far, and the things we've discussed now, also in terms of the need for their implementation, We will do that, and surely I hope we will not have a return of the situation we had in July. If something arises, let us sit together and think how to resolve matters. It should not be about discrediting someone or taking away one's independence. Yes, I think that way we will be able to move ahead. Just one news to share. It actually happened last week. For the first time in 10 years, we had a decision by the French court to bring back money transferred out of Ukraine. This is the first ever case. 3.7 million euros. So I think it's time for other countries to follow the suit, helping to restore money legally taken from the country.
So, Benjamin, a final comment from you. I trust you have seen demonstrated the very active Ukrainian interest in the anti-corruption effort and how extremely informed everybody is about it.
Right. Well, first, thank you for mentioning the work with the French court. And I had the pleasure yesterday of visiting the amazing teams at NABU, and we talked about the cooperation with France, and we'll be there. You already have a partnership with PNF. But just there's a lot to do, and we mentioned what happened this summer and the reaction to it. But you know what? I will end on an optimistic note, which is that seeing that in the middle of a war, in the middle of a conference about this war and about how we can continue supporting Ukraine's heroic resistance against Russian aggression, the very fact that we have this panel, that it's been so open, so direct, that we have the room engaged like this, that when I meet with Ukrainian NGOs, it's the same people who are advocating for more weapons, more sanctions against Russia, but also pushing us to push for more reforms and more efforts in the fight against corruption, makes me very optimistic, very admiring of the resilience of Ukrainian society, and very optimistic about Ukraine's Europe future.
If you like this video, then like, share, and subscribe to Mirror Now.